Alright, hello everyone, and welcome to the third part of our Planet of the Daleks commentary track here on the channel. We're going to start off in 3, 2, 1. Okay, so something I realized while I was looking over the last, something I realized while I was looking over the last recording that I did, the commentary track for episode 2, is I noticed that I got really sidetracked when I was making, I was saying some stupid shit about Robert Holmes and comparing him to Terry Nation. And I was trying to say there was that the Thals being volunteers for this war with the Daleks was sort of like an analogy for almost the Vietnam War, or you could draw comparisons back to the first two world wars, where you had a lot of young kids, especially in America, that were being drafted into the military, but more often than not, they were volunteering for the military, expecting glory, especially based on past wars. Let's say the Dalek Thal War in the original series, the original 1963 serial, The Daleks. Let's say that was World War II. In Genesis of the Daleks, we see World War One. Yeah, whatever. And here we're sort of seeing like a sort of a Vietnam War sort of continuation, that sort of era. It's a very nice comparison to draw because the Thals are all volunteers. They're usually young people like Weber who have no idea what they're getting into, and they're just getting gunned down by Daleks like left and right. And this planet takes place on a jungle. You know, it's a jungle planet with a bunch of weird shit there that they don't understand. So it's very like you can compare it to sort of those three wars and sort of the evolution of the Daleks, how it evolves with what we as a world finds to be threatening or more uh, unempathetic, you know? And I think really that is the core of what the Daleks should be. The Daleks are an embodiment of what we think whoever we're fighting in a war really is. Obviously, they're most inspired by the Nazis, and if you boil the Nazis down to their core beliefs, you get a Dalek. And that sort of idea has evolved, and we've ran through it throughout the years. And I guarantee you, fucking none of this shit that I am talking about right now was considered when Terry Nation sat his ass down to write Planet of the Daleks. Okay, I'm just gonna be real with you right now. That's not what happened. You know, he wasn't thinking about the fucking Vietnam. Dude, I don't even know. This is 73 was this season? I have no idea if the Vietnam War was even going on at that point. You know, I'm a history nerd, but I'm a history nerd for like the 1800s, the 1700s. I don't know jack diddly about the last century, but I just think it's a very neat comparison to draw. Oh, this is a very interesting element of the episode because I actually didn't know this was a real thing. So in this episode, like the core of the planet's icy or some shit, and instead of having like hot springs and geysers all over the place, you've got springs of molten ice all over Spyridon. And I didn't know that molten ice was actually a thing in real life. You know, like it's ice. You know, it's cold enough to be considered ice, but it's not cold enough to be solid, and it sort of remains in this like liquid state despite the fact that it is ice. So it's sort of like a liquid solid. It's so fucking weird. But yeah, apparently molten ice is actually a thing. I didn't even know that. In this show, it just looks like they put cum on the actors or something. Male ejaculate, I should say. This video is not getting monetized anyway. It's a goddamn commentary track from a channel with less than 100 subscribers. Here's Here's a very palatable comparison to the original 1963 serial, The Daleks, where, you know, you've got the Thals sort of going in the caves and sort of like this back entrance to get into city of the Daleks to launch a counterattack or to sort of attack the Daleks. Um, as I said, this serial was like Terry Nation put all of his Dalek ideas into a blender and just mashed that shit right up. I like how you can tell they got really lazy with the Spyridon characters. You know, the indigenous creatures of Spyridon who are supposed to be invisible entirely, and you can just tell that they got a little lazy and just decided to put big fur costumes on them and said, "Oh, well, that's just what they wear to keep out from the cold." You know, you know, because the planet Spyridon's so cold. You know, guys. But it's a neat budget-friendly way to have invisible creatures walking around, I suppose. And when they really need to be invisible, then, you know, they throw off the cloaks. They throw the cloaks off the actors, and it actually works that way. Still, the biggest missed shot of this serial is not just having the fucking Daleks be invisible at any point in time. This is a very nice set here. I really like the sort of cold tunnel, and they only crawl through it, I think, in this episode, like in this one little scene here. They don't use this set again, which I think is a bit of a shame, because as cave sets go in Classic Who, this is one of the better ones by far. It's much better than the Tom Baker story that was aping off Star Wars. It's much better than the cave sets they use. They didn't even have a cave set for that fucking story. They put the actors in front of like a blue screen and said, "Well, there's cave shit around you." God, that is a what is that story called? I know it's loosely inspired by Greek mythology, and it's also loosely inspired by Star Wars because Star Wars was big at the time. And Doctor Who was like, we're the fucking longest running sci-fi show ever. But we're not more popular than Doctor Who, you know. You can tell the producers were a little salty about that at the time, so they tried to. It's Underworld. That's what the fucking serial is called, Underworld. It is one of those so bad it's good episodes from the Tom Baker era, which you don't get a lot. Usually in later Tom Baker era, it's either so bad it's bad, or you know, with the earlier Tom Baker stuff, it's just genuinely great. Rarely do you ever get a so bad it's good serial in the Tom Baker era. Although I think the Leisure Hive can be counted among those. Here we're going to see the Third Doctor implement an ingenious weapon that he's just devised out of a cassette player to immobilize a Dalek. You're going to want to watch intently, as you just see what this guy can whip together with your fucking MP3. He's taking your iPod and he's killing a Dalek with it. That's what's about to happen right here. Look at him, dude. God, I talked about this in the last one. I know I sound like I'm repeating myself sometimes, but I love how just killable the Daleks were in Classic Who, you know. You can't, like, in New Who, they burn you if you touch them or some shit. So you could never do that. And there's ups and downs to that, really. See, here, that brings up another point that I actually like to mention, and it's especially relevant when you're talking about even earlier Classic Who, like with the first three Doctors. They're prone to just killing shit sometimes. Um, you know, it's not really like New Who, because in New Who, the Doctor claims that he would never ever kill a thing. He would never fucking harm a fly, which is just so untrue, and it's so inconsistent with the character, because in Classic Who, you have episodes where he just starts gunning shit down. And it happens multiple times, especially in Second Doctor episodes. I remember specifically in The Invasion, the Second Doctor killed Cybermen. And in his penultimate story, The Seeds of Doom, I think it was, he just vaporized Ice Warriors. And you're sitting there and you're like, what the fuck am I watching right now? What the hell is going on? Uh, it's just very like, and I'm saying that like you especially if you're a fan of New Who, because you'll be confused when you just see the Doctor, especially second and third Doctor and sixth Doctor when they're just killing people, and you're gonna be like, that's so weird. But you gotta remember that that is the Doctor. You know, when he doesn't like to kill people or creatures, but when the going gets tough, like he's not gonna fucking back down from that. And I hate how they characterize the Master in the new show, especially compared to like how Roger Delgado was originally. And I mean, this doesn't just apply to New Who, because I also hate Anthony Ainley as the Master. I mean, he's good in some stuff, but he's just so bad most of the time. But anyway, I hate the way that the Master's characterized, all except for Missy. The Missy and Roger Delgado are the two incarnations of the Master that I actually genuinely enjoy. All the others, except for Derek, if Derek Jacobi had more time as the Master, if they just used him instead of John Sim, then I would have been fine with that incarnation probably. But yeah, those two really are the only two that I can think of, just Missy and Delgado, who actually capture what I think it means to be the Master. And I haven't actually seen Series 12 yet. I sort of started the Ultimate Marathon of Doctor Who specifically to build up to watching Series 12, but I know the Master comes back in that. I'm not going to comment on that, though. What I will comment on real quick is how apparently this city, which was built by a team of 12 Daleks, theoretically, a science team of Daleks, no less, who enslaved the Spyridans here. Maybe they just took over this city and retooled it for the Daleks, whatever. It's tens, if not hundreds of stories high, if you see how fast the elevator's moving here. And every time they go on a floor, one of the 12 Daleks that exist right now on the planet, one of those 12 Daleks is on the other end of that elevator to meet them. But when they go to the bottom floor, you know, the floor that's closest to, like, the fucking core of Spyridon, where they could, like, really, their reactor and shit's down there, their heat exhaust for the Daleks, it's all down there. When they get to the bottom floor here, there is not a fucking Dalek in sight. Like, if I was a Dalek, thinking like a Dalek, I would put one Dalek on the top floor. I'd probably put like two Daleks on the top floor, two on the bottom floor, and then just spread the others out. But you really wouldn't need more than a Dalek to take care of two people. At least thinking like a Dalek, that's how they would think. So it's very interesting that you know you get there and here they're swimming around in male ejaculate right now. You can just see the river flowing through. It's very interesting. Seeing that the Daleks did not decide to do that. I suppose because that would be a logical decision to make, you know. And I know the Daleks aren't pure beings of logic, you know, they're not robots, they're not the Cybermen, but they're smart. You know, just because they're not purely logical beings doesn't mean they're not intelligent, because they are. And I'm gonna take a sip of coffee here. By the way, I'm recording this at midnight. And I've got coffee here to keep me going. Just a little fun fact, just a little trivia for you guys. So yeah, first of all, this is like the bottom layer of this city, where I would expect the prisoners to go if they thought they had nowhere else to go. And there's more to be said about that. Like, why did the doctor think that going to the bottom floor was a good idea? You know, there's more there to dissect, but that's really getting into nitpicks, and although I love nitpicks, you know, I don't want to spend all this commentary attack just talking about that shit. But here we go. They finally mustered together a Dalek force to send down. And at the perfect time, too, because the core of the world is erupting, and those Daleks just get showered in molten ice. And a really fun weakness that the Daleks have, if you didn't know, is that they can't take extreme colds, at least according to Planet of the Daleks. I don't think that weakness is ever mentioned again. The Daleks, you'll notice in Classic Who especially, the Daleks have a lot of weird weaknesses that are quickly forgotten about in later stories. For the betterment of those stories, to be fair. Yeah, you can see they're on level 0 now, so this was indeed the bottom floor, you know, there's no mistake. It just doesn't make too much sense that they wouldn't have anyone positioned down here. And here we got Merritt. The fucking G Merritt here. Look at this guy. He had a lot of time to get underneath that door that was falling down. And he knows that his gun isn't gonna fucking destroy a Dalek. Surely the Thals know by now that their guns, unless they're concentrated or some bullshit, their guns are not just gonna straight up kill a Dalek in 1 or 2 shots. So he's sitting there with his little gun. It's attached to his fucking holster, which I like. This is a good gun design. I mentioned this in episode 1. He's sitting there and he's watching the door close, and he's thinking in his head, I'm gonna actually stay behind and hold the Daleks back, even though holding the Daleks back in this situation would not matter, because no matter what, the door is closing at the same amount of time. It's too low for them to fire in there already. So why would you not just go into the room with the boys and live? And B, he knows that he's not gonna do jack shit to the Daleks. So why the fuck does he think he feels the need to heroically sacrifice himself? Here, Rebek saying that all of Merritt's courage was for nothing, which is true, Rebek. Good observation. Yeah, why does he feel the need to just stay out there and just throw his life away? And it's probably for the scene that's coming up here. Just to let you guys know, it's most likely for the scene that we're about to see, where the Doctor learns how to pilot a hot air balloon, an improvised hot air balloon in the Pertwee style. But it's just so fucking hilarious, and they treat it like a heroic sacrifice. Personally, my fan theory is that Merritt was just feeling suicidal after all this bullshit and wanted a release. He's like, I'll just go out fighting the Daleks. Let's get a hashtag RIP Merritt going. That'd be a very funny meme. Hey guys, look, they're using... I was gonna spout out some trivia bullshit about how many times the Daleks have used laser cutters to cut through doors and shit by this point. And I know they had like they had flamethrowers in the Daleks' master plan. But I can't remember the first time the Daleks used something like that to cut through a door. And by the way, that's a very nice cutting effect there. I'm sure they had like some hot knife or something pressed up to like just maybe some very malleable material, and that they dragged it down and cut it through. It's just a very nice cutting effect. But anyway, that yeah, it's something that happens like more often than you'd think. Where, like, the Daleks are trapped on the other end of it, or they're not trapped, but they've trapped people behind a door. And they've got to melt through the door or burn a hole through it to destroy it, like, or to get through and kill the people inside. And usually, it sort of makes sense, because sometimes the Daleks will be invading alien bases or worlds and shit, and they don't really know how to operate their technology, so they've just got to brute force their way through it, a la The Parting of the Ways. But the problem with that is that here on Spyridon, where they have their own city, they have complete control over this fucking place. They don't have any door override mechanism to speak of. It's just a little weird. And I'm sure that's maybe explained in this episode. Like, obviously, the Doctor used the sonic screwdriver to fuck with the door controls, but you'd think that they would have a command station to override that anyway. That's just being put into the mind of a fascistic space Nazi. I would think, well, we better have backups for everything, you know. That's sort of I love like the weird shit the Daleks just happen to have backups for. Like no one would ever think about doing that shit. No one would ever think, oh, someone's going to get through our defenses in specifically this way. We better have a defense for that specifically, for that set of actions. And it is just, I don't complain about that in Dalek stories when they come up with some contrived bullshit to just strike down niche ways of sort of breaking their defenses. Because it's something a Dalek would do. They're made of pure hatred and fear more than anything. They're going to think of all the ways that they can be stopped, you know, and they're going to try to prevent those from happening. Iconic shot coming up here when we see the army of 10,000 Daleks that's hidden in Spyridon. And I don't have a lot of time to talk about this. I've got like a minute and a half, so I'm just going to say real quick that what you're about to see, like this shot right here, you might think that's a matte painting, but no, that's an actual miniature set that they built. And there were these original Dalek toys from the 1960s, which were very inaccurate models of Daleks. But they sold for like half a pound, if I can remember. So they were good for army building. And you know, they're used a lot in like stop motion productions, so sort of background things, to just have a Dalek army ready to go. And it's interesting that they were actually used in the show as like a background army to represent the army of 10,000 Daleks that they've got here on Spyridon. That's an interesting part of trivia. The Planet of the Daleks specifically has a lot of interesting trivia behind it. Although for some reason on Amazon it doesn't have a trivia, like most of these classic Doctor Who serials, if you're watching them, they have little trivia sidebars where you can read up on sort of the history of the production of them. But Planet of the Daleks is one of the few that doesn't have that. And I'm assuming it's some like legal reasons, like some legal bullshit with the Terry Nation estate. I couldn't really tell you. But it's interesting nonetheless. Anyway, we're halfway through Planet of the Daleks now. That was episode 3. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Gonna be moving on to episode 4. I'm gonna record it right now. And I will see you guys then, when you will probably watch it.